So, hello everybody, this is the Neuzeit Instruments DROP, which I already teased in a previous video where I showed how to control the Zoom Live Track L6 completely with the drop, so you can control the volume with the faders and the EQ and all these things. And this is really a real-world application for doing so. And watch my previous video about the Zoom Live Track L6 to see how to use that as a MIDI mixer. And you might wonder what Neuzeit means. It's simply the German word for modern times. So it's the instrument for modern times here. And I can already tell you it has some tricks upon its sleeve, which you haven't seen on any controller on the market so far. But first, let's have a look what's in the box. It gives you a little getting started manual with a teaser on the cover. There is no return after you open that. Yeah, you get a quick start guide, but there is also a proper long manual available from their webpage where you can read up all the details. And besides that, we have a power plug, which is also nice to see, but it can also be powered via USB, which we will also have a look at in a second. And a really nice touch is that we get many cables. We get a USB-C cable, we get a MIDI adapter to the 5-pin MIDI, and we get also USB-C to A adapter, which we will see what that is good for in a second as well. You get some more small mini TRS cables for MIDI, for example, a SD card adapter if you have a bigger SD card drive, and 2 stickers. Finally, here's the device, and the device is really well built. It's full metal. That also means it's quite heavy. It has many knobs. If you do the calculations, 4 multiplied by 8 gives us 32 knobs, and we also have 8 faders and 8 buttons. And what is on the left side, we will have a look at that also in a moment. As I said, you have here 36 knobs, but it's not only what you see here. You have 2 layers. So currently I'm actually on layer B, which means you can simply toggle between the 2 layers and have the duplicate number of controls. I guess you directly have the question, these are absolute faders, so they are not motorized or anything. So how do you find the exact value? And this is also nicely done. You get this indication with the arrows, so they will light up like this if you are at the exact value, and if not, it shows you where you have to move the slider to pick up the value. You see here it's up here, and if I go up, then we will finally reach here now the correct value. So pretty helpful to get your fader in the right position. So far there is no editor for it. You can edit all of the functionality directly on the device, and I have to say that's really done well. It's really easy to set up something. For example, if, let's say we want to change here this knob, you simply go into the edit menu, you open the menu, then you say mapping, and then you simply move the fader you want to change like this, and then you can have all the settings. For example, you can activate it, so you can also deactivate some knobs here. You can change the color. For example, let's go here with yellow, green, or you see all the different colors here. Quite a bunch of colors. If you're happy with that, you can change the name. And there is also a cool feature with the device. You have 2 USB-C connectors, and that's what the adapter is good for, to have USB-A as well. And ta-da, you can connect a proper USB-C keyboard, and with that you can edit the name, so you can give that a meaningful name. Let's say I want to have here, for example, the cutoff. I can simply type away, press return, and you get here the name cutoff. Also nice, you can use here the cursor keys also to navigate in the display. So this is really cool. You can also go to the left and the right. And this is really helpful for naming all the controls properly, so you see or get a hint what you're doing. But one drawback is here that the knobs are not touch sensitive. So you have to move them to see what they actually do. So let's go here. So if I now turn it, I will see it's cut off. I'm changing the cutoff, but it's not changing when I simply touch it. But instead you can also press it. So also pressing it can have another function which you can edit. So you have also 36 push buttons, which is also pretty cool. For example, you could program them to reset the value or a completely different function. So, but we forgot to have a look here at the back. So let's do that quickly. And that's really a nice touch that the writing is upside down. So when you turn it like this, you directly can read which connection is, and you can easier find the one you are looking for. So let's have a look at that, maybe more from the left as well. So here is a button to turn it on. So here is the power plug. You don't have to use a power plug. You can also power it via USB-C, but then you lose the option to, for example, connect a keyboard here. So it's a good idea to use the power plug, but nevertheless, if you're on a go, it's great to have the possibility to power it via USB-C. So then you have the second USB-C. You can either connect it to a computer to control your DAW, for example, or you can connect additional gear like a hardware sequencer or a keyboard. Then you have an SD card. This is helpful for upgrading the firmware as well as storing your projects, so your setups, and you get also some pre-configuration to control specific synthesizers, which we will also have a look at in a second. And then we have two CV inputs and outputs, and yeah, you can control your Eurorack systems with that. I think that's a little bit limiting because you can control one instrument with that, but then you have no modulation. So you need one for gate and you need one for the pitch. And then it would be nice to have at least one more to also control one modulation option. But nevertheless, we have that here on board. And the input can be used if you want to clock via your Eurorack system, you can do that as well. Or you can even switch those scenes here, which we will have a look at later on, what they are good for. That's also possible via Eurorack. And then you have 4 MIDI inputs and outputs. And I was a bit confused what these A-B switches are here for. And it turns out the idea is simply there are these two formats, TRS-A and TRS-B wiring, and you don't really have to care which cables to bring. You can simply pick that here on the device, which is really a good idea to have a feature like that, but might be also give you errors if you accidentally move such a switch. And so yeah, you need to make sure that it's at the right position before you start your gig. So much for the back. Let's have another look what we can do in this menu. So first thing you basically need to do is to configure the connections you're using up here. And if you go there, you see there is, first one is called DAW, but you can also change this and rename this. And this is going out to USB 1 and in from USB 1 as well. But you could also change that here to have a different setup. And you have 8 different devices which you can use here. And with these buttons, you change between them. So I have a second one here configured, which I used in a previous video to control the Zoom L6 here, and you could create a new one. So you can also name them. So you could have here MIDI 1, for example, configured as Hydrasynth or whatever synthesizer you want to access. And then you have for MIDI instruments, you have more options. You can also say here where you want to go, and you can also pick the channel. So you can have actually 16 channels, so you could control different devices or create here such devices which address different channels, and they could have their separate dedicated name. So a second thing is then the mapping, where you map all these controls. We already saw that, and you simply have to press a button or push something to edit it. And I only showed here the color and the name you could do, but you have many, many more options also related to this additional function, which we will see in a second. And you can pick here, for example, CC. You can have also CC with 14 bits, you can have an RPN, you can use pitch bend, aftertouch, and that's it. So these are the data messages you can send with this device. And there's also a learn function. So if you have a device connected which can send out actually the data you want to control, you can simply go on learn and then get the data and say, yeah, I want to map this. And that's also a way to configure it. So it's pretty fast to do, even if you have so many knobs, to get a usable setup. So much for the right-hand side, and maybe one drawback also to mention, it's designed for 8 channels, but what gets regularly forgotten also by other manufacturers is that then if you use 8 channels, you have no control left to control the master channel, so the master volume or maybe a master effect. So you need to either sacrifice one or sacrifice maybe one knob row for controlling your master channel, or you control your master channel in the mixer you're using, which is also a way to do that. But it would have been nice to have a 9th channel with those 4 knobs and a fader as well. But let's have a look at the left side. Besides the display here, which we already used, there are lots of other buttons. So what is the idea here? The idea here is that you have so-called snapshots, or you could call them scenes or whatever you like. So you can store 4 multiplied with 520 different snapshots, but there's even more. There is banks you can select from, again, 20 banks, another one, and which means you have 20 multiplied with 20, so you can store 400 snapshots. We first need to leave here this menu, and then we can also access the bank. So it's on the first bank, and you could have here much more. So 400 different snapshots can be stored. And what can you do with these snapshots? A snapshot means a complete settings of the position of the knobs, buttons, and your faders, which is really cool. And you can then switch with them either instantly or with a delay to the different setting. And let's check that out, how that works. I simply attached it here to Bitwig and I loaded a Diva plugin with that. And I map these 4 knobs to 4 parameters straight away. So one controls here the cutoff. The second one controls, where are we? The second one is not visible. It controls the modulation of the amplitude. And the next one controls here the effect setting of the reverb. And the last but not least, that one controls the noise level. And then I stored 2 snapshots which crossfade between the 2. Let's check that out. Let's have this playback. And now I can activate the scene. This basically opens up everything quite fully, and we can do that. Pretty crazy and nice. And while it's doing, you can still manipulate the knobs. So for example, I could do something like that, or still close everything down and could still again move to the next one. And now there are different options to change this or to modulate this. This knob up here changes how quickly the transition happens. So if you move it fully to the left, it will do it instantly. So you can do something like this or somewhere in between. And the full length can be set here. So if we turn that one, you will see the current length is set to 2 bars. I could also go to 8, and then it's much longer. So if it's fully to the right, it's then the maximum here. So it's now 8 bars. Let's try this. This will take a bit. You always see it's also nicely counting backwards here. So really cool. And it's also pretty easy to set this up. You simply move the knobs or the faders into the position you want to have and then go on save. So for example, we could create another one where we crank up everything maximum to the right, as well as noise. Then you go on save, and then you can choose any of these. Let's simply go that one. And that's it. Go here. Oh, maybe let's turn that down to 2, then it's faster. 2 bars. And now let's try out that one. And you can edit these snapshots as well if you go here to Shift and Edit. Oh, and one command, another little drawback is that the writing on the Shift functions is very, very hard to read. Would have been a better choice to make this in black instead of this white on this very light brown. It's very hard to read, but I guess you get used to that. So you can select the snapshot here now. And we have here the snapshot, and for example, you can change the color with that. So you can say, I want to have this in magenta, and you can also give this a name. And again, we could either use that, which also works quite okay to edit it via the knobs, but I have here connected the keyboard, and I can simply say, whatever, down. Let's simply call it down, go return, and then, we needed to select it here. First the backspace is also working, and then we do down and press return, and we are good to go. And then this one has a name which we can use. So let's leave the edit mode. That's what you can do here in edit mode. Oh, there's also the option, let's select that one, to move that one. If you think this location was not a good choice, you could say, okay, let's move it and let's put it up here. And I also want to have it in a different color. Let's go with white, why not? And that's it. And then you have the 3 different setups. And you're ready to go. So that was the jump mode, but there's also the drop mode. The difference with drop is that it's happening instantly after a certain time and not by using this knob setting. So that means if it's up here, it will then drop this next one. So let's try out that one. But for that, we need to have playback activated. And this goes now with the clock, so you should feed in a clock or use the internal clock and feed other devices with that clock. So we are now in that state. We could go back here, and you see it just reached the top. Let's do it again. We are at the top. Let's do it now. So it counts down, and then it's activated. Let's do it with that. So when it reaches the top, it will activate the new snapshot. Let's wait a bit. Let's go with that. So it counts down, and when it reaches the top, it switches to the other mode. Okay, so that's the drop mode. Let's stop that. You need to press Shift to stop this as well. But what you can also do is to chain different snapshot, and this is done with the chain mode. So you need to press Shift and drop, and there you can have a setup of the different snapshots you can combine. So you can have here different settings, how many bars these snapshots should last, and then create also here a playlist with these variations, and then you can start the snapshot and then it plays the different. We need to activate playback, and then you have a nice animation how this is happening. And this is just a setup here to switch between the different ones, and then it's finished. And if you go to repeat, it keeps reactivating the last snapshot. So it does not jump up again, it reactivates the last snapshot when it's on the top. That's also working outside of the chain mode. Let's have a look at that. So if we do here, go to here, it will automatically cue it again to execute that when it's on the top. So pretty interesting thing to do. What I expected a bit is that you could go below 1 bar. So for example, have very quick filter variations and to create grooves, but that's currently not possible. So the switch length here is going from 1 bar up to 32 bars. So that's what you can do. You can also have some quantize how quickly it should jump when you press here a new snapshot. It could be instantly or here with 16th, 8th, 4th, and so on. That's also an option. Yeah, and by the way, you also have a little MIDI monitor. So if you want to check out what's going on, what's input here, you can watch that as well. But this upper grid here can also be used for something else. You can activate it here with the Shift and the jump button. Then you get to the normal grid, which allows you to play it with notes, but you can also edit each of the pads to send something different. So you could also use it to send a specific CC or a program change. So if you want to set these up for program changes, that's possible as well. And you could also do that with the normal snapshot. So if you're in the normal snapshot mode, let's go back to that and let's edit them again. You see when you scroll down, there's also a whole slot setup. So here you can also say you want either to send notes, CC, NPR, pitch bend, aftertouch, or program change, and program change with a bank as well. And this is then also happening when you press that button. For example, you could have here a string sound and here a synth sound or whatever. And then when you activate that, it will do this fade over thingy with a different sound as well. That's also quite an option to do. Or you could just use it as a program selector. So if you play with your keyboard, adjust the volumes and some parameters, and here you can select simply different sounds. So you could have a string pad here, piano, lead sound, whatever on a push of a button. So one last thing I wanted to show you is that you can control hardware for sure. And I did now connect my Hydrasynth keyboard. And for that, there is a template as well. And you can start with a clean slate. If you go here into the menu, select project. By the way, you can store all of the setup into a project file. You can load that up again, rename it, delete it, and so on. But you can also say clean init, and then if we do so, everything will be cleared. And I wanted to show you how we can do the same thing as we did with a DAW and with Diva, with a hardware synth. But the setup here is even easier. So first, let's leave that. And now let's say we want to edit that. But first, we should activate here a device. So turn that on, then give it a name. We could say, again, I can do this here on a keyboard. Hydrasynth. Oh, by the way, it's an English keyword, not a German one. So, so we have a Z and Y switched. whatever, let's keep it like that. So we gave it a name. It will be on channel 1 and the output will be USB 1 because I'm going via my computer to connect to the Hydrasynth, and we can also set the input, which is also USB 1. So let's go back to here. Let's turn the knob again, and we have now the Hydrasynth here selected already. And we want control the CC, which we now can use the monitor for. So you can go to learn, and I can turn here this cutoff knob on the Hydrasynth and I will get the values. And now I can simply say I want to pick that. And then I was a bit confused how to accept that. You need to press here the knob to accept it, and then it will be set at this setting. But now we want to do that differently. So this would be one option to do it, but there is also this database. So let's go back to the menu. And for the device we just configured, there's another setting. We can select a database. So let's do that. And if we do that, you get lots of options which are stored here on a SD card to pick from. So there's also Arturia synths, lots of synths you have here pre-configured. And I will pick here ASM, the Hydrasynth. Let's load that up. And we have now configured this database of mappings. Now let's go back here to our mapping setting. Again, let's turn the knob. And now we can access the database. Let's pick that. And here you can simply pick the parameter you want to have. And okay, it's a cutoff I want to have, so it's directly selected, but you could also pick more of them. But let's go here with the first cutoff. And let's accept that, and we have configured the cutoff to use with that knob. Let's try that out. I press a note. And that's really working nicely. I could do that now for more knobs, but I guess you get the idea. Let's just show you how this works out now with the snapshots. And yeah, let's just put the filter down. Yeah, like this. Let's store it, save it, bam, first one. Let's do it like this for the second snapshot. Save that as well, bam. And we're already ready to go. We selected here 32 bars, which is a bit too much. Let's go back to 2. And that's already working. So pretty fast to set up. And you could use this database to configure also other parameters on the Hydrasynth. I'm pretty sure I forgot many things because this thing is really deep, but nevertheless actually pretty easy to use and to configure. I'm sure there's much more they can do with that. Also, I will look into having a script with, or an extension, I like to call it extension, for Bitwig and Reaper in the future, but they're still working on it. But for the meantime, there's also a simple script by Bitwig and as well by Ableton, which allows you to use this device as well with these two doors. Yeah, what do you think? Is it a cool new thing to have? Is it a cool idea with these drop and jump features? Write me down in the comments, and until next time, make some funky music.